Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ignite Visibility YouTube channel. Today, we will be challenging ourselves to do the most advanced SEO webinar of all time. I know that's a tall order, especially because I've been in this industry for somewhere between 15 and 20 years at this point, and I have met some amazing SEOs in my career, and I have been through some incredibly advanced SEO presentations. Today, we're going to have some fun with it. We might not get as deep and technical as we could potentially on a topic, but what we're going to be doing is really covering the breadth of search engine optimization in regards to more of an enterprise level on-site optimization. We'll be talking a little bit about off-site optimization, link building, but not as much as you would think. More the 90% rule as far as that's concerned for on-site optimization. 90% on-site, more of a 10% offsite. That's really the focus of this presentation. The reason we're doing it is because we want to talk about all this latest stuff that's been going on, the comments that have been coming in from Google, all the things that we're seeing at our agency, Ignite Visibility. But what's really exciting is it's not just me doing this webinar. We have a director with us, Jen Cornwell. We have another VP with us, Alan Bush, both from Ignite Visibility. And then we also have a very special guest from one of the larger CMS platforms out there who is a director of SEO, somebody I absolutely love working with, love the relationship with, and who's going to bring in some insight from a whole nother perspective. So should be a great conversation. So we're going to get into it. We're going to get through these technical items. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to bring in some surprises through the way. And I really encourage you, take the time, chat inside of YouTube. I want to see you light up that YouTube chat. We're going to be there. We're going to be responding to comments. We want to have some fun with this. Light up that YouTube chat. Put in any question you have, any comment you have. Let's have some fun. Let's make this high energy. I would really appreciate it. It's going to be fun. And then the last thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned before we get started right now is we have something really special for you at the end. A ton of value. You have to stay until the end to get it, but I'll give you a hint. It's going to be really actionable for your SEO strategy. Probably the main reason you came here. Get those action items. If you stay towards the end and you give us some likes, you give us some comments, you light it up, I'm going to make sure you get a ton of value for your investment in your time with us here at Ignite Visibility on this most advanced SEO webinar of all time. That's what we're challenging ourselves to do. SEO community, love you. Let's go ahead and see what we get into on this webinar. I will see you just in a minute. Let's pop into the presentation. All right, everybody, we're going to get started. Welcome to what we hope is a very advanced webinar, potentially the most advanced webinar of all time. We've got some amazing guests today, and we're going to go ahead and dive into it. I want to go ahead and introduce our guests that we have here. First one is Alan Bush.
I'm Alan Bush. I'm the VP of Strategy here at Ignite Visibility. 15 years experience in the SEO industry, 7 years with Ignite. And I'm also a professor of SEO at the University of California and the University of San Diego.
Thanks for being here, Alan. We also have Jennifer Cornwell on. Jennifer, would you like to say hi?
Hi, my name is Jen Cornwell. I'm a director of digital strategy here at Ignite. I've been at Ignite for about 4 years and been doing digital marketing closer to 6 or 7. I'm excited to be here.
And I teased in the intro a special guest, and we have him here today. We're so excited that we could have Mordy take some time and be a part of this. Mordy, would you like to say hi?
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me. My name is Mordy Oberstein. I'm the head of SEO branding at Wix. I've been in the digital space for about 9 years. I was SEMrush's former head of communications. I still consult on communications for SEMrush. That's basically it in a nutshell. Now you know me.
Thanks so much for being here. We're really excited to get some of your knowledge as we get into these really technical and cool things in search engine optimization. So also, I don't know why I got my own slide. I swear I didn't do this, but this is me, John Lincoln, CEO of Ignite Visibility. Been doing SEO for a little over 15 years now. Absolutely love it. Work on many large sites and small sites, and excited to share some knowledge today. So we're going to get into advanced SEO tips and tricks, but we're really, the format of this presentation is to go over some of the biggest developments that we've seen in search engine optimization over the last year or two. We've actually looked at announcements from Google in order to put this together. So the first one that we have, starting with probably not the easiest first, but is something called MUM. So MUM, Multitask Unified Model algorithm enables users to search images instead of just text. It impacts the way search results appear for users, and it's based off of AI and machine learning. But there's actually more to it than just that. Alan, tell us a little bit about Mum.
Essentially, it's really the extension of what used to be called BERT. It's taking over that role by adding better usage for intent. Like the original thing with BERT is that he was trying to get the intent behind the search rather than just the keywords. Mum is like an amplified version of that, and it's using even multi-language. It's using a context from other languages to pull in results, so you get the best results based on what you mean by your search rather than just the language.
So I think that's a great way to talk about it. It's an extension of BERT. You know, people will talk about the fact that it connects multimedia, so it connects things like Google Lens and search queries. But I think the main takeaway from Mum, at least from my mind, is when Google announced Mum, they give us an example of like a hiking. Yeah, I hiked Mount Adams. Now I want to hike Mount Fuji. What do I need to do to prepare differently? And they took the word prepare and they broke that down. Like prepare could mean, I don't know, training. Prepare could mean the equipment you need. It's really a parsing of intent or parsing of words, so that you're able to offer the user like a sort of like 360-degree take on all the various things that they need. And that's amazing.
I think what's so amazing about where Google is going is they're connecting languages, they're connecting topics, they're finding the right words, they're mapping all of these different entities together. And so that just to me says one thing that's so powerful, that has been the biggest shift in the last year that I've seen for SEO. And that's a bigger focus on intent and connectivity cross language and just generally throughout the internet. And we're not just seeing it inside of text. We are also seeing it in video and images, which we'll get into a little bit later. Alan, tell us a little bit about this comment and some of the thoughts that you have on the perfect URL structure this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's really about being uniform with your URL structure. I think John Mueller is not necessarily in saying that you have to be capitalized or have to be lowercase, but if you do use those things, keep them uniform. And it's one of those topics that come up a lot. It causes canonical issues because they do mean separate things. If you capitalize and or keep one lowercase, if you use underscores versus hyphens, make sure you're using the same context. And I will say, even just visibly, when you underline a URL, underscores get lost in that underline. So make sure you're using hyphens to keep them uniform.
We see this a lot in different CMSs. So not every CMS automatically creates every URL as always lowercase or always uppercase. So it's really important, whether you're on WordPress or Magento or in Drupal, to take a look at how your CMS platform's structuring your URLs, make sure they are consistent.
I would like to personally challenge the entire internet to come up with one URL structure that we could all get behind at this point. I'd like to recommend lowercase and dashes and directory structure, opposed to all this other legacy stuff. So if you're up for that, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear about what you think is the perfect URL structure inside of the YouTube Premiere right now. What do you think is the best? Are you up for that? Will you join the challenge with us? Let us know. So next thing, tip 3. Sitemaps. Sitemaps are so important, and I feel like people don't put enough emphasis on sitemaps in general. And with a sitemap now, you have this new report inside of Google Search Console that shows you how many URLs have been discovered, that shows you how many have been indexed. And then there's another report, the crawl report, that then gives you even more granular data on sitemaps. Alan, talk to us about your thoughts on sitemaps now and what you want people to know.
An XML sitemap in particular is basically the table of contents for your website. And a lot of times when I do audits on people's websites, whether it be students or even clients, sometimes they're pointing people to pages that are either superfluous, empty, just things that should not even be indexed. So you make sure that you tighten up what you're telling people to go to. It's almost like if you had a table of contents and it emphasized a page and you went to that page and it was blank. There's no point in having that in there, or it was the wrong language, or it was upside down. You know, there's things that you don't want to point people to. So you should have the sitemaps. They should also tell you the location and the dates. And even if you have a large scale website, make sure you have a sitemap of sitemaps, meaning that it's broken down by images and videos and sections of your website.
Yeah, it's like to the point that John's making here. The idea of the sitemap is to make it as easy as possible for Google to find what's on your website. So, for example, like at Wix, we automatically generate a new sitemap once you think it's hit you 10,000 or 20,000 URLs, like new sitemap. Because like the whole idea is like you don't want to have Google, crawl through 30 million or in this case, 250,000 pages, that doesn't make it any easier for them.
The other thing I'd say is making sure your sitemap aligns with the other things in your website that are telling Google what's available. So your robots.txt file is a really big one. If you're not allowing Google to crawl it through the robots file, don't keep it in your sitemap. There are a lot of tools that'll do it automatically. So another CMS check, just make sure that you're structured so that anything you put in one place or don't want to show is automatically going to pull out of there.
Throw it in the comments, everybody. How many sitemaps do you have? How are you thinking about sitemaps? When's the last time you've updated your sitemap? I would love to hear about it. And I would love to challenge the internet. Make sure every page in your sitemap is a page that you really want to have indexed. And or if you don't want to have it indexed, you actually have a directive on there to have it be no indexed or to have a rel canonical. Get really tight with your site structure. Next thing is tip 4, leverage the new alignment of Google's testing tools. So one of the things that I've noticed lately is that Google is coming out with a lot of new testing tools, some of them being the AMP testing tool, the mobile friendly testing tool, and the rich results testing tool, as well as the URL inspection tool. Alan, are you excited about these tools, and how can website owners use these tools in order to make sure their sites set up properly?
Yeah, previously we had to rely on third-party tools that Google would sometimes approve, sometimes wouldn't. And I think that if Google's telling you certain things, then you should be really paying close attention to what they're giving you the information with. So the fact that Google's giving you more testing tools, even outside of Search Console, which is things that we would normally use to kind of put on your website and measure, these are things you could just do on your website without even installing anything.
Mordy, you know more about tools than many people out there with your experience. Do you find that these tools are still valuable? Are you seeing more enterprise companies develop other tools outside of that? Talk to us about that a little bit.
I think what you're seeing is a lot of companies integrating what Google's already doing. Like, for example, like the URL inspection API. There's a great example of that, where every tool possible is trying to pull that in, because that's a great way to keep track of what's going on with your pages. I think you obviously see it, like Search Console, that team is incredibly active. And I think if you're the tools that are going to win the day in the SEO world, the tools that are going to be find creative ways to integrate with Google, right? In the URL inspection API, there's a ton of things you can do with that. Obviously, tools like Screaming Frog pull that in really quickly. I'm interested to see what happens, in a month, 6 months from now, when the tools have more time to put some dev into it, because that'll be fascinating.
I was going to say the Screaming Frog integration for the API from Search Console that came out just a couple of months ago. That's super useful. We're already using Screaming Frog all the time. I think if you're not in Search Console investigating and exploring the tools available, you're really missing out. I don't think people sometimes use Search Console enough.
I have to agree with all of you. I think that's a great point. Whoever's going to win is going to be the person who can integrate all these different data sources together and then also bring their own unique spin on it, which we've been working on quite a bit with our new software, Certainty Tech. We're really, really excited about. So the next thing that we have here is maybe one of the least understood topics in all search engine optimization, one of the most debated, and something that I have personally put hundreds and hundreds of hours into. And so has Alan Bush. In fact, I'm going to toot our own horn here. I think we have helped more websites recover from this issue than many other people out there because we've just spent so much time with it. Alan, talk to us a little bit about JavaScript and SEO. What are some of the things that you see there that other people don't see?
Yeah, I could go on about this one, so I'll try to keep it succinct as possible. But JavaScript and SEO, that has kind of a weird relationship. Basically, Google does understand certain things within JavaScript, and they're aiming to get better at it. But it's like if you gave them a book and you said, here, read the entire book or read the Cliff Notes version of it. The JavaScript is the entire book. The HTML, the basic stuff that we normally read, are the Cliff Notes, and they're trying to get things faster and better and understand the context. So you give them the Cliff Notes version. JavaScript adds a lot to that. So right now they're not being able to read it as closely as possible. I'm not saying they won't, but if you have a way, if you have a website that's built within JavaScript, you may want to start doing things like pre-rendering. And John and I have gone with a lot of websites and helped them a lot by basically just providing a pre-rendering solution where they provide the HTML and content in front of the JavaScript so that Google can read that and the user gets the benefit of what the JavaScript is doing.
I want to give one actionable tip in addition to what Alan just said right now. Turn off the JavaScript, install the website developer toolbar for Chrome and turn off the JavaScript on your website and go from page to page. And if you don't see everything rendering there, you are at risk on some level. Everybody, I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you tested turning off JavaScript on your website? Have you seen any issues? Do you have any questions about that? Go ahead and leave it in the comments on the premiere on YouTube right now. Next topic, we're talking about the future of indexing and the URL inspection results. So Google has the URL inspection tool. Bing gives you some inspection tools. There's the new Index Now Bing tool that has recently come out, which also integrates with all-in-one SEO pack. We expect that to have more indexing capabilities in the future. But basically, the URL inspection tool provides information about Google's indexed version of a specific page. Information includes AMP errors, structured data errors, and indexing issues. Alan, how should we be using this tool?
It's really important because we're starting to see a lot of pages being taken out of the index because they don't think Google doesn't think it's very important. And I think that we need to get some context as to why. And we're seeing a lot of some either clients or even prospects or even some of my students where they're wondering why certain pages are not being seen by Google any longer. They're being crawled perfectly fine. So the tools are saying, hey, they're fine. But Google doesn't think it's important to put it in the index. They think it's basically superfluous. So we want to get the data from them, understanding why it is that way. And so we can make our appropriate adjustments.
Yeah, I think that's like the major point. When people sort of expect every single page on their site to be crawled and indexed, and that's not necessarily the case. And Google's getting way more specific on what they decide to include and not include into the actual index. And if you see something that it's crawled but not indexed, it may make sense to sort of up the ante for Google and sort of create more context on that page, internal linking, sort of like, hey, this is really an important page. It needs to be on the web. And you need to be very understanding that you're not going to have all of your pages indexed. That's not the normal expectation.
Internal linking is the answer we've seen, or I've seen, start to work when clients are having a hard time getting their pages indexed. And even just that request to index inside of Search Console isn't doing it anymore. And this is really important if you've done a site migration or if you've launched a brand new website, just the expectation that it's going to take a little bit longer for it to show up.
So when you think about indexing, what are some of the factors that come to mind? For me, sometimes it's overall domain authority in some ways, or number of links to a page. Another thing is usually content quality. Recently, I had a prospect who came to us and said, hey, we have 2,000 blog posts. We've got a great domain name. How come everything's not in the index? When we actually looked at it, we realized that although it was a great domain name, overall, it did not really have great domain authority. There weren't a lot of links pointing at the pages that were indexed. And when we inspected some of them might have just had one word on them. Some of them might have been, a couple hundred words. And so I think those are some of the things to troubleshoot on top of things like technical errors and specific technical reasons that they shouldn't be in the index. But I would say, Mordy, this is becoming a real big focus for a lot of SEOs lately, right?
Yeah, it's amazing to see. I think once people saw the crawl not index thing come out, it was like it's almost like it's like black hole of SEOs being sucked into that conversation. But Google's just getting smarter with it.
You're so right. So the next topic that we have here is tip 7, improve content over fixing technical errors. This was a statement, and we can pull up that clip from John Mueller and play that real quick.
It's kind of tricky because with the core updates, we don't focus so much on just individual issues, but rather like the relevance of the website overall. And that can include things like the usability and the ads on a page, but it's essentially the website overall. And usually that also means kind of the focus of the content, the way you're presenting things, the way you're making it clear to users what's behind the content, like what the sources are, all of these things. All of that kind of plays in. So just going in and changing like everything around the content, I think you can probably get some improvements there. But essentially, if you really want Google to see your website as something significantly better, you probably also need to work on the content side.
Essentially, what John Mueller was getting at is that There's a lot of things you could structurally fix on a page specifically, but in essence, you should be focusing on the content, because a lot of times people will do the workaround. I should put this up here and move this around this way and not improve actually the language and context and content on the actual page. So I think it's getting more towards that. I still think it's important to make sure your overall website is really fixed. The initial site audit should be done. However, the individual page structure, the focus should be really on the content and context, as we're seeing with Mum.
I love this stuff. I mean, I'm an algorithm hunter. So like I would say since 2018, when the Medic update came out, the things that you see Google doing on the content side is absolutely amazing. Obviously, there are enormous gaps, but when they get it right, it's phenomenal. Look, I always say that the commodity of a site is not its speed. It's not, it's none of that stuff. It's the content, whether it be a product or a blog. If people are coming and Google is showing the page because of the content. So yeah, when it comes to a core update, the thing that Google is going to be worried about is its main commodity, which is your content, which, by the way, to that point, like, it does mean that you have to worry about not just that particular page, but the site overall. And John's talked about this a million times over. It's not a just per page thing. They look at the entire site, which makes sense because, hey, if you're on one page, if you go to the next page on that site and it's total crap, that's not what Google wants either.
Love it. Another challenge for everybody today. I challenge you to make every single one of your pages high quality content, best in class. Think about what that would do to your overall rankings if you had that level of evaluation for each page. So now we're getting into kind of a niche technical thing, 301 redirect, a permanent redirect. What we're talking about here is a debated topic. How long do you need to leave a 301 redirect in place? There's a lot of debates around how many 301 redirects you should have. How much does it slow things down? When should you do a 302? When should you do a 301? When should you do a rel canonical? When should you, use the URL removal tool or 404 a page? Alan, talk to us about this news and why it's important.
I want to clarify that you should always clean up your 301s internally in the linking structure of your website. So don't rely on a redirect to just get you there. But the redirects are in place in case there's an outsider that comes in that needs to go to those locations. And as being stated here, 301 redirect should be at least a year, because that will keep the juice flowing into that as you're fixing it. If you're using something that's going to change back to something where it used to be, a 302 would be more appropriate.
I think 301s get skipped sometimes, depending on who's handling the website. I think that's really common. I think it's a good reason to bring on an SEO agency or SEO professional consulting of some sort. We see it all the time in migrations, which I think is where this is the most important. If you're moving content from one CMS to another, moving pages over, changing just a segment of the website, those 301s are really, really valuable and really important for your user experience.
Challenge everybody. When's the last time you crawled your site and made sure everything was 301 redirecting properly? So now we're talking about just kind of a niche thing. It feels that tip 9, Google is essentially saying that interstitials can hurt your ability to rank. This one's a little straightforward. Alan, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, essentially, if you keep putting things in front of people and tricking them into doing something else, then you're going to suffer a penalty. There was actually an update that came out some years ago called Fred that was kind of based around this, is where there was people abusing the fact that they were sticking interstitial ads and they wouldn't come up until a few seconds later. Then all of a sudden you click on it by accident and then you get the ad click. So it's really important to really be honest with Google, essentially.
From just managing interstitials in general, right? Like, does it make sense really from a marketing perspective to have a super intrusive interstitial? So when you do get into that page experience or user experience conversation, what are you really giving? Like, if you're throwing a giant offer in your face, that's a full page covering up all of the content. The other place we've run into this a little bit is with gated content. I think that's tough. I think with gated content, starting to understand how much are you showing, how much are you displaying, what are you covering with an interstitial, and then really making sure you understand what kind of impact it might be having on your rankings.
So now we're talking about page speed, and page speed bleeds into Core Web Vitals, which we'll also be talking about a little bit. But Google recently rolled out a new version of Page Speed Insights, and the update makes the tool's user interface more intuitive, and it also covers Core Web Vital assessment right on the tool. So Alan, when you're thinking about page speed and you're approaching this for a website, how do you go about doing that?
This is like the first thing I go to. if I'm testing each individual section of the website, meaning not just the home page, but the category page, the subcategory, product, blog, I run it through this page speed insights. There may be a couple other tools that also help. But what's great about Google's tools, that gives you the mobile and desktop version of it, and it gives you a score. And you can really see if you're in the red, it's, yeah, you need to fix that immediately. Yellow, make some improvements. Green, you're pretty good to go, and you don't have to worry about it so much. And it makes it very simple. It gives you a lot of technical jargon, to be honest with you, but it does break it down in color coding and by mobile and desktop, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, having a separation there of lab data and field data, if you don't have field data, so generally speaking, TBT is sort of the replacement for FID. Although from the data that I've seen, FID is super easy to pass and TBT is not exactly. So I don't know if it's definitely not a one-to-one match. But if you're improving your TBT, as soon as your site does have enough data for field data, you would generally be passing FID as a rule.
I think the PageSpeed Insights tool has changed a lot in just the last year with being more actionable. So it's a lot easier to go in there. There is still a lot of technical jargon, but it at least shows you what the technical things are and what you're going to make an impact on. So we'll talk more about Core Web Vitals, but it'll let you know, like, your largest contentful paint. Here are the things we think you should fix that will directly impact that metric. Before, it was just like a really long list of things that were maybe a little difficult to understand and weed through. But yeah, it's gotten really helpful and a lot better, I think.
What's your page speed, everybody? Throw it in the chat. What questions you have on page speed? We would love to hear about it. Next thing we're going to talk about here is making the topic of your page extraordinarily clear. So content structure and in general on-page optimization, that has not gone anywhere. And actually, in a recent clip from John Mueller, he did bring up that on-page optimization and making the keyword clear is just as important as ever.
I would recommend, if there's something that you want to tell us that your page is about, to make that as visible as possible. So don't just put that as like a one-word mention on the bottom of your article, but rather like use it in your titles, use it in your headings, use it in your subheadings, use it in captions from images, all of these things to make it as clear as possible for users and for Google when they go to your page that this page is about this topic.
Alan, talk to us about that a little bit.
I'm always surprised at how many pages and websites have home and their brand name in it still on their homepage. That's not the focus of the page. You're not home. This is where we're going to understand your business. So this is a huge, important part. And as we're seeing in some of the results, we might even see like the header tag being pulled in to kind of replicate what the user is trying to understand from your website. So headings and title tags are starting to get a little bit more close together. That's an interesting point, because it used to be the title tag's the most important tag, point blank, but now the heading tags, H1s, H2s, are starting to kind of go neck and neck with the titles.
I've literally looked at thousands upon thousands of homepages just to go through, okay, can I look at this homepage and can I get a really quick sense of what this page is about, what they do, what the site does? And I'll throw 80% of the sites I looked at. I mean, you're talking about small business, large, whatever it is, there's SaaS companies. You look at the page, like, I don't know what this is. I don't think Google knows what it is either, obviously. So that page structure is just super important, both for search engines and for your actual users and for your bottom line. It's like such an obvious point, but it's so lacking on so many sites.
I would challenge everybody to look at every page on their website and ask themselves, do you have your top 3 to 5 keywords from your keyword assignments in the title, headings, subheadings, the images within H2s? And I would guess that probably a good 40 to 80% of your pages are not fully optimized as well as they could be. This might be one of the biggest opportunities out there. Tip 12, answer popular questions from the perspective of the end user. Outline your content, make the page extremely readable, aim for the Google answer box. Jen, what are we talking about here as far as answering questions on the page? What goes through your mind?
I think Answering questions that people are already asking is one of the easiest ways to know that you're providing valuable quality content. So doing the research ahead of time to see what are the questions people are asking around your topic, and then automatically including them into your content strategy. It really helps with click-through rates sometimes. I know there's a lot of conversation about like zero click and things like that, that position zero, but really valuable because you already know that the interest is there and that people are looking for it.
So on feature snippets, I always say point to like there are list feature snippets and there are paragraph feature snippets. Paragraph feature snippets, you can end up in a zero-click situation with them. I read the snippet, I'm done, I got my answer. But if your page represents a list of some kind, people will generally click through that because Google will offer you 8 steps. Well, are there 9? I don't know if there are 9. I better go click to make sure that I didn't miss anything and get that 9th step. So not all feature snippets are equal. Not all pages are equal, but if you definitely have that kind of listicle kind of page, it's gold.
Absolutely. I think what you have to understand is that anyone searching for something is looking for an answer to some problem or some solution they need. So you should be the resource they go to. And Google wants you to be that resource. So they're going to point you to that direction if you're answering the common questions that are being asked. Now, one area you could do this through is a few tools out there, SEMrush. There's a few free ones or freemium models to answer the public, also asked. And then Google itself, if you type in a query in Google, the things that come up when you type that search in are also things that people are commonly asking. So think about those things and when you're getting the answers, and then include them in your FAQs and blog topics.
Challenge for everybody. Does your web page answer every question on the topic around those specific keywords? Challenge, go ahead and leave it in the chat. I'd love to hear if it does or if it doesn't. Number 13, explore the nuances of voice search capabilities. Mordy, for voice search, what goes through your head first?
Voice search has the opportunity to be a mature aspect or segue for search. I think that where the user base is currently at is asking, your Google device some whacked out question or very basic question. So if your page represents something that's very feature snippetable, for lack of a better word, then there's an opportunity that if you add the markup to it, that this could be an opportunity for you to, get some notoriety and some traffic for yourself.
Yeah, I think we've been talking about voice search for like a long time, almost as long as I've been in SEO. And I don't know that it's gained the popularity that people think it will. It sounds really nice in theory. I think we are moving in a direction of doing a lot more like voice commands with your phone and things like that. But I think people are still in the habit and the expectation that they're going to go in and they're going to look at it anyway, and then maybe navigate from there in a regular written search too. So it is a nice add. I think it probably makes sense for more industries than others.
Yeah, I think that people talk to their devices like they talk to their friends now, more and more. It used to be they would just say 1 or 2 words, but now people are inquiring things, usually on mobile. And I think there should be better connections on between the mobile devices. But I believe that they're trying to also capitalize on the Amazon and these other devices that are in your home. And it's really just, hey, play me this, or what's the capital of such and such, right? These are just kind of generic questions. But I think that there is a casual environment that's starting to get implicated. So I feel like the future of it will be some blend between what you're typing and what you actually search, and then melding the two.
A couple quick technical items. Speakable markup will allow you to specifically specify what you'd like to have spoken from a page. There's something called the Google Actions console that allows you to actually build actions inside of Google. And if you'd like to, you can say, okay, G, meaning Google, talk to Ignite Visibility, and you can actually play an actions game that we created through Google that is inside of that store. So there's a lot you can do there. Is it going to drive the bottom line? Probably not too much at the moment, but the speakable markup is a good hack. Number 14, leverage the power of video optimization. So we are seeing that video is now somewhere between 40 and 50% of the content that is being returned inside of Google from YouTube, from other video sites. It's more important than ever. Jen, when we talk about optimizing videos, what specific thoughts do you have there?
I think it's really important to think about repurposing your videos and how do you integrate them into the user experience, and whether that's including them on other channels, but making sure they live on your website, and then making sure they live on probably YouTube. I think that's probably the most common for most people. What we're seeing more and more in SERP is when you have some of those indicators and those signals to a video, the likelihood of the video showing up is higher. And in addition, Google is showing a much more richer SERP, right? So it's got videos in it, it's got images, it's got a map pack. I like the juicer SERP. Go look at the juicer SERP on your own time, but that's got like every single rich result available in it, including videos on like how to use a juicer, because Google is really trying to understand what the user is looking for. So yeah, I think video is a really powerful tool inside of your SEO campaign.
So one of the things I think video, we don't talk enough about it. We talk a lot about Discover and getting traffic from your website into Discover. I know that if you have a niche or a topic, your site or your YouTube channel deals with a certain topic that's very, very popular on YouTube. So certain things are very popular for video content. Certain things are not as popular for video content. If you deal with a topic or subtopics, whatever they are, that are very video friendly, a lot of the content that shows up in Discover is video content from YouTube. So don't necessarily worry about your site, but worry about your YouTube channel showing up in Discover, and do things around creating a lot of authority around your YouTube channel, creating content very regularly, creating comprehensive content that covers from multiple perspectives, from the video perspective on your actual YouTube channel, not just your website, so that you can get that traffic to your channel from Discover.
Offsite SEO, essentially make sure your titles and descriptions inside of the videos are really optimized. Link to the page that's appropriate to your website from your YouTube videos. And also, as Jen mentioned, repurposing content. If you could take a series of things you've talked about and create a video out of that, and then even with videos that you're creating new, reverse engineer and pull audio and pull transcriptions out of that, you have so much great content from just generating one great video.
Also, there is clip markup and seek markup, and these are ways to make your video more search engine friendly and to specify specific parts of videos and specific videos so that they rank in search. That, along with the video sitemap and embedding videos on specific pages and optimizing those videos, can make quite the difference. The next item that we have here is really, really interesting, and this is design. So let me go ahead and read this. So John Mueller said this about website design. He said, sometimes those small differences do play a role in regard to how people perceive your website. For example, if you have something that's on a financial topic and people come to you and say, well, your information is okay, but it's presented in a way that looks very amateurish, then that could reflect on how your website is perceived, and in the long run could reflect something that is visible in search as well. So we're hearing that bad design in UX could actually hurt your search engine ranking.
Sometimes if you've been working on a website for so long, it's like it's your baby, and you know which parts are good, and you kind of like, you're very protective when someone comes to you and says it's ugly, or like the colors are bad, or something like that. But sometimes that's what you need to hear, and sometimes those small differences do play a role.
Mordy, is that news to you?
No, it's not. Because if you track what's happening in the algorithm, particularly around the core updates for a while now, that's kind of what's happening. The way I always think of it, and it sounds insane to a lot of SEOs, is brand marketing and SEO are very much the same thing. Perception and SEO go like hand in hand. If your users look at your page a certain way and they perceive it a certain way, the way that Google's able to use machine learning and profile a page is trying to simulate that very thing. Whereas you go to a page as a user, you're like, wow, there's a million banner ads, there's a million pop-ups, there's a million ads of whatever kind showing up. The perception around that is just off. Google's looking at it the same kind of way. So if you're, imagine you have content, CTA, content, CTA, that layout, the way that Google's able to profile things, like that doesn't speak well to your site authority, to the quality of your content, and really, can we really trust your purpose here? So no, it's not shocking to me. I'm glad that John came out and said it. And I think a lot of the ways you think about your content is as a user, what's the brand perception? Because that'll align to the way that Google's trying to look at it.
I think a place that this is really important is mobile. I think that's often a place where design gets overlooked. Sometimes I think people are being a little bit mobile first, but we're so used to doing all of our work on a desktop. I think it's really easy to go in and design a site desktop only or with it as the priority. But the way you manage and navigate in a mobile site can really make the difference between converting or not. If you have a frustrating user experience that's based in design, I know I personally have left. I'm like, I can't even do this anymore. I can't even look. I'm going to have to go look later when I can actually get to a desktop. So yeah, incredibly important.
What separates the good from the great? It's really customer service, presentation, then the quality of it. Those three factors are going to really play important to your website.
You heard it here, everybody. Your design has to be best in class in order to rank well in Google long term. Make sure you are investing in mobile and desktop. Audit your website. If you don't have a good design, it could be holding you back. Now we're going to be talking a little bit about tip number 16, which is improve long form content by going after passage indexing. Jen, talk to us about this a little bit.
Yeah, passage indexing. Google announced it in like late 2020 and then actually rolled it out in early 2021. But I think we've talked a little bit about MUM. We've talked about user intent. This is just another thing where Google's gotten really smart about what content you have and how it wants to index it. So you don't have tons of control over how you get served. It's really just about whether or not you're providing the information that Google's going to think is valuable.
Yeah, a lot of that comes through the ranking 0 and those snippets that come above that. I will say that increasing not only the keywords, but the orbital language around the keywords is really important to that. And that's what Google's really trying to understand the context. So when you're writing rich content, make sure you're including words that are commonly used and associated with the words that you're really honing in and focusing on.
Tip number 17 is spelling and grammar errors can actually hurt your SEO. Alan, were you aware of this?
No, totally new to me. No, absolutely. It's the most important thing. If you're going to present yourself in a certain way, make sure you spell and have good grammar. This is such an obvious thing for any business, any website. Make sure your spelling and grammar is appropriate.
Tip number 18, improve your website's core web vitals. Jen, what should we be doing here?
Yeah, using the Core Web Vital tool, part of that page speed insight tool that we talked about earlier, to really understand how you perform for the 3 metrics listed here: largest contentful paint, first input delay, and cumulative layout shift. Those are the things that Google has decided are going to signal as a ranking factor.
Tip 19, Google is now using heading tags as title tags after a recent update. Alan, we're seeing this roll out quite a bit.
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, is essentially that with the heading tags are becoming prominently more important and showing up in SERPs where previously it was not. So they're starting to experiment a little bit with that. So make sure that your title tags and your heading tags are aligned and they're not contradictory information, and it's focusing on what you really want to focus on the website.
Tip 20, understand how Google treats international. Mordy, international SEO, I feel like, is a little known thing. It's certainly outside of the SEO community. In the SEO community, not a lot of people know about it. Talk to us about international just a little bit and what that means.
So yeah, there's a lot of things you can have. You have multiple languages on your site. You're targeting multiple regions. You could be targeting one country with multiple regions. I think Belgium's a great case because they speak both. What is it? French and is it German, Dutch? I don't know. Another language other than French. So you have to set your site up. In other words, you have multiple content. You can have content that's catered to the US and the UK, but on different pages. It's basically duplicate content. There's hreflang, there's geo-targeting, there's canonicals. If you don't set this up right, you could easily, I think it's one of the most complicated areas in the entire SEO. You can easily screw up your entire site.
You know, it's really important that as your website grows internationally, that you have your specific international pages structured. I generally like to recommend a directory structure, not a subdomain, not different domains, having really clear hreflang tags and canonicals on every single version of that, writing unique content for every single page that you have. So, not just having an English version mapped to UK, to Australia, and to the US, but having unique content that's in that individual area created. And it really goes back to this overall view on quality. When you have quality content that's specific to a certain area, it gives you this huge opportunity to rank all around the world. And here, Google is saying to make sure that you specify canonical URLs, so the exact URL that you have with the rel canonical tag, and that you make sure that you have your hreflang tags in a good spot. And there's certainly a lot more we could cover on this one, but international, great way to grow and something everybody should be looking at as they are expanding. Understanding that Google is profiling everything they can. Mordy, talk to us about this.
This has been going on again, like since the era of the modern core update. There's always been core updates, but it's really March 2018, or if we really want to be more accurate, August 2018 when the medic update rolled out. But in a nutshell, what Google's doing is taking a very holistic look at your site and profiling it. Like I'll give you a great case. So if you're a medical site and you're offering health information, but there's a ton of all of your linking goes to, or internal linking goes to, some product pages, or you have a bunch of banner ads, or you have a bunch of pop-ups all going to a product. So what's your profile? Like, are you really a health information site, or are you really like, a covert commerce site? And the only reason the content is there is because you want to point users to your products. The way that machine learning in general works is that you create profiles. Like John Mueller's talked about this, right? They ask, how do you create good content for this? Well, what we do in Google is we look at what content from the super authorities basically are doing. We create a profile for how content around this topic is talked about, how it's discussed, and then we take a look at your site and see if it matches up or not. So Google's creating these profiles to see, okay, what should good content look and sound like? What should a good web page, what should a good website look and sound like and feel like? And then it's matching it up to what you're doing. So it's super important to make sure that your profile aligns to what Google's profile is. And as machine learning advances, it's really important to make sure that you continue to evolve with it, because as Google's profile changes, so should yours.
Really, really great stuff, Mordy. And it makes me think a lot about EAT, but thinking about EAT, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness by category. Awesome tip there for tip 20. Tip 21, whatever you think is going to get you into Discover won't.
So yeah, I spent a way too much time messing around with Google Discover and tracking things. And the only way to do it is manually, because it's a personalized feed. There's no tool to do this. We talk a lot in the SEO world about, you have to make sure you have the right image specifications, which is the only, technical thing you can do to get into Discover. But John Mueller's talked about Discover in terms of like, core updates they play a role in what shows up in Discover. Now, once you're talking about core updates playing a role in what shows up in Discover, now we're talking about what core updates do: site quality, site authority, that sort of thing. What generally I see showing up in Discover is sites that have a certain degree of like staunch authority within a given area. So if you have a very strong focus within a particular vertical, you have a higher chance of showing up in Discover, because it's not about a particular page, but it's about how Google looks at your site and the strength of your site overall.
Really important if you're thinking about Google Discover. The most important thing is the size of your image, and that you're using that max image preview tag. Google is on record saying that will increase your Discover clicks by up to 300% by using that tag. Inside of Google Search Console, there is the Discover report. We generally see sites with a lot of content, sites that put out a lot of news, get a lot of traffic from Discover. The other sites do not. If you haven't tried Discover, you can find it in Chrome, but you can also on any Android device, you can scroll to the right and you can see your Discover feed. And there's some stuff that kind of shows up in there. The other thing is Discover works a little bit like cookies. So if you go to a site a couple times, that ends up showing up in your Discover feed. It's almost like a subscription, which really makes it important to do more and more content marketing and to get you to be a part of that Discover feed. Tip 22, start thinking like a marketer by considering predictive need. I love this statement. Talk to us about it, Mordy.
All right, so this goes back to mom. Take a very simple query, like go to the Yankees game, right? So very simple. Google basically shows you places to buy tickets to a baseball game. But if you started thinking about what mom is going to do, mom is going to take those words "go to" and it's going to parse it. What does it mean to go to? Well, are you going to get beaten up if you're wearing a Red Sox jersey at a Yankee game, right? How do I get there? Do I need a COVID test? The way mom is going to understand content is going to try to predict the various needs that the user has by breaking down the words in the query. You should do the same thing. And that's what I talked about before about aligning to how Google's machine learning is profiling content and topics. Same thing here. It'll at least at minimum give you the chance to rank for more things. So if you're talking about going to a baseball game on your website, going to a Yankees game, so break that down. Try to predict if someone's coming to my website to buy tickets to a game, what else do they need to know? Do they need to know about the neighborhood? Do they need to know about transportation? Do they need to know about, is this a good price to buy a ticket at, or should I just wait for another game? All that kind of things where you're trying to predict what the user will need when they get to your site is going to very much align to what mom's going to do, I think.
Another challenge for you, if you had to plug in directly into Google the information that they would want to serve, what would that look like? We call that the Google plugin strategy here. So plugging in the exact content that they would like, that allows you to kind of think about what you'd have to map in order to have that perfectly fit inside of Google. Really awesome strategy there. As we get into tip 23, usability will be the difference maker for many pages. Mordy?
So this goes back to passage ranking, actually. So if Google's getting really good at understanding content, it could pull out one passage like, hey, you know, this page should rank here because there's one line. The things that we do, or sometimes a lot of things that we do to help Google understand a page, theoretically speaking, they don't need as much. In the future, they definitely won't need as much. So if you have two pages that basically get the content right, they offer the user a, you know, sound quality content that answers whatever question they're trying to answer. A lot of what I think is going to be the differentiating factor is going to be how usable is the page. In other words, that goes back to design. That goes back to how well does this page give over the information. So things like page structure might not be as important for Google to understand the page in the future, but it might be more important for, hey, if you have that page structure here, it means that your content is really digestible. And we're going to rank that over a page that might show the same thing, but doesn't break it down as well and doesn't offer the same kind of experience or usability to the user.
Tip 24, stop tracking every darn algorithm update. Talk to us about that, because some are important, but some aren't.
So back when I was at SEMrush, we found that rank volatility, the number of days with high rank volatility increased by like 64%, something like 65%, which is insane. You dive into that, and you start looking, what are the ranking patterns? A lot of those are reversals. So one day you lose rankings, 2 weeks later, Google rolls out another unconfirmed baby algorithm update and you regain those rankings. Or a lot of that is, yeah, the top 5 results pretty much stay the same, but 7, 8, and 9 might fluctuate a bit and eventually reverse back. What I think is happening there, this is my personal theory, Google hasn't said anything about this. What I think is happening is that Google's machine learning is recalibrating, testing something out, seeing if it worked, doesn't work, testing it out again, trying something different. And then eventually when it feels comfortable with making an official change, so then you have a core update rollout. So if you're seeing a lot of volatility, and I see this all the time, site loses 20 positions, don't freak out, wait it out, see what happens when the next update rolls out, the next unconfirmed update rolls out, because most of the time you'll see those rankings returned. Maybe not exactly, but in the general ballpark.
Really great comments. Challenge for everybody. Ignore all the small updates, especially the ones where you rolled back, but look at all the big updates, maybe the 1, 2, or 3 big updates that have a massive impact on your website over the year, and try to understand why and how you can use that data to improve things moving forward. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. As we are wrapping up this webinar, this presentation, keep in mind, I do have a very special, actionable, very cool offer for you coming in just a moment here. But before we do, Jen, final thoughts on SEO in 2022, 2023. What would you like people to focus on?
I think it's user experience. It's user experience and understanding that Google's job is to give the user the answer to their question. So that's what's going to be the most important. Don't hide your answers, and then make it really easy for Google and the person looking for the answer to find it.
Mordy.
I would say it's to understand what quality content really means. What does it actually, outside of, your author profile, all the checklist things we do to check off for EAT, but what does actually, good content look like? It's highly targeted, it's highly nuanced, and it really answers very specific questions for a very specific user base.
Alan.
Multimedia. Make sure you have a variety to kind of capitalize on both of what they've then said. Have different assets for different people that digest content differently. Blogs, audio, videos, and they can all be distributed across the web, and make sure you include all of that on your website as well.
I love it. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. I'm going to go on record with the plugin strategy, listening to the 3 of you, looking at our presentation. How do we plug directly into Google? Mordy, thank you so much for being on. Jennifer, Alan, thank you so much for being on. We hope you have a great day. To all of our listeners and watchers, stay tuned. I'm going to jump over into another screen. I'm going to give you a gift for spending so much time for you today. And goodbye, everybody. Hope you have a great day. We'll see you later. Also, as I said, I have a special offer for you. So I'd like to offer you a downloadable checklist based off of everything that we covered here today. This is going to touch on each item we discussed and lay out the specific steps you can take to address each one. We're going to be sending that to you momentarily, and you can also access it in the description below. I've personally reviewed this checklist of action items that you can do for your website, and I can tell you for sure it's going to help you increase your search engine optimization. It's going to be a really, really exciting, actionable checklist, and we're very happy to be able to give it to you. Also, if you want to talk a little bit more in depth about everything we covered today and how it applies to your site specifically, or if you have questions about how your business can start generating more traffic with search engine optimization or any other service, we would love to connect you with an expert here at Ignite Visibility who can take a deeper look at your site, your marketing mix, put together a strategic plan, an audit, a forecast, a timeline, all the things you need to grow as we continue on throughout this year. If you're interested in a free audit and speaking with a true expert, shoot an email to Karen@ignitevisibility.com. That's Karen @ignitevisibility.com. Or you can email me directly at John, JOHN, @ignitevisibility.com. If you do that, we'll get back to you within one business day and let you know if you're a qualified business or not. Thank you so much, everybody. Keep an eye out for that really cool, actionable checklist. I think you're going to love it for search engine optimization. If you need anything, let us know.